Hi, I'm Lily Wilkinson. I am the author of Hunger of Thorns, which is shortlisted for the 2024 CBCA Awards, which is great. The stimulus for writing the book came from a lot of different places. I have always wanted to write fantasy. This was my 18th book, my first fantasy, and it's something I've always wanted to do, but I think I wanted to be good enough to do it. I'm quite picky about my fantasy. I need it to be good, and I wanted to be a good enough writer to write something that I thought I would want to read. So I guess the originally the book was inspired by the Chicago outsider artist Henry Darger, who wrote these and illustrated these incredibly fantastical stories about lost girls, and also by the trope of the lost child in the Australian bush. And I pretty quickly turned away from both of those ideas because I realised that I was not the right person to tell either of those stories for kind of identity-based reasons. And I also realized that what I actually wanted to write about was in some ways my own childhood. I had a best friend much like Odette, and she and I used to play together down by the creek, just as Maud and Odette do, playing Lost Girls. And the book became, quite unexpectedly to me, sort of deeply personal book, and sort of became a way for me to sort of process some childhood grief. And I wanted to kind of draw on this, the kind of familiar archetypes of British fantasy that feel very comforting to me. And so that kind of very cozy cottagecore sort of the familiarity of British fairy tales and fantasy that you see in sort of Susan Cooper and Diana Wynne Jones. But I wanted also to kind of expose some of that comfort to be sort of a little darker. And so that's why I sort of asked myself the question, well, how would capitalism work with magic? And so in Anglion, the world that this book is set in, capitalism has sort of absorbed magic, and so magic is now wrapped up in patents, and you need a license to practice magic. And there are like 100 spells that regular people outside of these big corporations are allowed to do, and anyone else is a resistance witch who gets taken away to a rehabilitation camp, which is something I explored in the companion book, Deep is the Fen, which is not a direct sequel but set in the same world. And so I kind of wanted to give it this dark underbelly, also the idea of the power plant that is where Maud spends a lot of time in the book, as sort of also being this sort of artifact of attempting to contain magic and to control it. And as a result of that, it also became very much a feminist story, because magic in this world sort of exists in greater quantities in people with female energy, which is not necessarily women, but people who contain female energy. And so there is a lot of controlling of women in the book, and a lot of pressure on young girls like Maud to be good and to be nice. And I wanted to really explore the wildness of childhood, particularly of childhood of girls, and the intensity of adolescent and childhood friendship, and how easily that intensity can slip from friendship into romance sometimes. And I wanted to really pay homage to that kind of friendship, those incredibly intense friendships of childhood, and how I think that we don't give friendship enough respect in our stories. We spend so much time focusing on romance, and don't get me wrong, I love romance, but I feel like that the grief we feel when a friend breaks up with you is sometimes just as intense as when a lover breaks up with you. And falling in love with a new friend can be just as intense as falling in love with a new lover. So I wanted to kind of weave all of those things in together, the feminism, the wildness of childhood, the rage of girls and women who have been suppressed and told to be good and quiet and nice for so long, and kind of join that in this kind of oppressive capitalist system that all exists in sort of this very cozy, cottagecore, beautiful world. And that is what became A Hunger of Thorns.